But maybe it's my Mac, I don't know. Did you do it on Mac? Did you do it on Mac? So this one was
that's weird. Why is that? Oh dear. But that won't it just show up normally? The other ones are fine.
And there is a video I didn't test it. I
You didn't have it.
don't test it, but on the other one.
Fabulous. I just wanted to keep it a minute on that.
I will fill it in.
Okay, no, it's okay. It's just for the badge, like, because I don't have pieces in the
No.
because I have like two.
No, it's one.
So, good afternoon. Welcome to this initiative of All Digital. My name is Renato Sabadini. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of All Digital. A few words about this meeting. You can imagine we had thoughts until the last minute whether to have it or not. Probably I was driving my staff mad with the possibility of a cancellation at the last minute. But in the end, following also the highly detailed information and advice of the Belgian Ministry of Health, we decided to go ahead. You will note a note of irony there. But first and foremost, probably because the subject of this meeting, of this debate is so crucial to what is happening in these hours. Even though there may be not too much, there might be not too much fake news about the coronavirus. Nevertheless, I think we all have been bombarded and showered with an enormous amount of information, which at times is not always helpful, and therefore the issue of media literacy becomes even more central to an occasion like this for all of us to become better navigator in a world that is much more connected than in the past, and where any kind of any significant problem can reverberate through the entire planet. To discuss this today, well, we are having, first of all, a presentation of Computer One, I guess. A presentation by a researcher, legal researcher of the VUB, the Free University of Belgium, the Dutch-speaking one, Olga Gotsopoulou, and who will talk about media literacy in the young, and because of a project that where she was part of in the past, and that will be a presentation of about 10-15 minutes, an hour, again also with Q&A in the end. Then we'll present the project Get Your Facts Straight, which is the project which All Digital is coordinating in relation to media literacy, and with an interesting formula, as you will hear. And then we will officially launch also the All Digital Week, because every year our organization takes the last week of March and creates a campaign where everybody in Europe, member organization and non-member organization, who is organizing an initiative at the local, regional, national level, which involves enhancing digital skills of the population, is welcome to be part of this campaign. We will put it on a map for them, etc. And this is basically the week of the year in which we have we attract usually a lot of attention because of the kind of initiatives that are carried out everywhere. It's a way of reminding all of us of the importance of having this week, which will start on 23 of March and will end on the 29th of March. Question that may be in place in various countries, and who knows, maybe even in this one by that time. We will have final remarks and a photo, and then you will be all invited to a networking cocktail.
So, do I need to use the microphone? No. Yes?
It's up to the public.
Can you
I think it's better.
No, choose the microphone.
It should be better with the microphone.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Can you? Yes. Okay. So, my name is Olga Gotsopoulou, and I'm a legal researcher at the VUB, at the Research Group for Law, Science, Technology and Society. I'm here. I would like to thank you very much for having me here today. And I would like especially to thank Renato and All Digital for the kind invitation, but also to thank all of you for being here today, and also the people who are watching now by the live stream, as far as I'm aware. Yes, I will be fast with my slides. I managed to change that.
I think you should, the keyboard.
Okay. So I'm going to start with a question we asked at the kids in this project that we were participating with. This is exactly the same question we asked these kids in this workshop we're organizing for them. Did you know Mona Lisa had a digital self? And the reason for that was because we wanted to show to them, we want to start immediately with our meeting with a deep fake AI example. This was created by scientists who managed to make out of humans' expressions the three different faces of Mona Lisa just at one image, and this image, they managed to do this also with other pictures of famous people from the past that we don't have so much material about them. So how all this is related to my talk today? The reason why I'm here today is because, as I said before, we participated in a project. We were invited to give a workshop to students and teachers at the same time, in the same room. So it was quite interesting, challenging, and demanding at the same time. As part of this Erasmus Plus funded project, it's called Get in Shape for Europe. It is an initiative of 5 European schools from Romania, which is the coordinator, from Bulgaria, Greece, Italy, and Poland. The project runs since September 2018 and it's going to be concluded in August. The target group, as I said before, were teachers and students from the ages of 14 and 19. And our role there was to come and provide a workshop on the topic of media literacy and fake news. But not only that, because the overall topic of the project was democratic competencies in the digital era. And every school had a different topic. And our specific invitation was if we were able to combine the topic of fake news and media manipulation with the other 4 topics. So as you can see, they tried to cover more or less all the topics of democratic competencies in the digital era. And as I said, our workshop included both students and teachers. Around 70 people participated in this workshop. Most of them children, the vast majority, and a number of around 20 teachers. The resources we used, some of the resources we used, included the methodology part, which was some non-formal education techniques, and the content part, which was which were about this Council of Europe study on information disorder from 2017, and also the European Handbook for Teaching Privacy and Data Protection in Schools, which is the outcome of another EU project. We focused on 3 thematic pillars. We started with what it means for the students' digital identity, what kind of information flows we see there, and of course personal data protection. And then we tried to combine this with the second pillar, which is the personalized content, filter bubbles, information disorder bots. That's in general what we said. We will see later in more details. And the third pillar was recommendations, what to do. With some of the recommendations were made by the children and the teachers, the target group. Other recommendations were made by others and they were endorsed by the target group. We will see all this later. So I have included some of the material that we use for this workshop. Starting with the digital identity, we tried to see what students and teachers believe that digital identity is, and what could entail for them, and how this would influence their offline activities in their daily life. We had a lot of discussions with them on that, and in the end it looked a little bit like this. The second part was to understand, and you don't see my title, but this is fine, what amount of information we give out consciously and willingly. And we started by taking sign-up forms for different famous and popular social media platforms. And we asked, with the students and the teachers, we tried to see what kind of information they ask. And we created these lists that you can see there. And of course, you can understand, I don't know, my slides have a little bit been corrupted, but it's fine now. Yeah, it's your information saga. We try to see what kind of information and how much information we also give out, and not so willingly or not so consciously, about ourselves, about other people. And of course, we discussed about cookies, sensors, about tagging, and a topic that caught the eye of the students and was something that they were really willing to discuss even further was, can you stop your parents sharing photos of you online? And then we dived a little bit deeper, and we tried to see how they understand derived and inferred data. We use this kind of, you will see also in other slides, these colorful rectangulars. It was a kind of trying to make the audience active, react and respond to what we were presenting to them, and participate actively to the statements and the questions we were having for them. So here you see a little bit how this old-fashioned voting with colorful papers looked like. Another tool we used was case studies. That was also explicitly suggested in the handbook, in the European handbook for teaching data protection and privacy at schools. So we started with giving them some information. This activity actually was taking place in smaller groups, so that they are able to have more interpersonal interactions. Since the kids were coming from different countries, the same for the teachers. The level of English was different. We had to take also this into account, and of course the intergenerational factor. Here we saw that how this case study developed, starting from giving them some information, almost no information, some more information, and then we tried to see what they understood from the discussion about inferred and derived data. And then we try to combine, to create a conjunction between this discussion about personal data with what we call their personalized content. But as you can see, we started smoothly, asking them what do they want to see, and if they only want to see what is most relevant for them. Although sometimes actually out there we have a lot more varied and diverse content, and that was very. It was not surprising at the same time, because the outcome of this poll was very diverse. There were people saying yes and people saying no. So, and to the fact of whether you want to see only personalized content. And then we delved into the topic of information disorder, as is it called by the Council of Europe in this guide from 2017, if I'm not mistaken, this report from 2017, which we also adopted because we thought it's a quite inclusive term for all the different kinds of information we wanted to present to the students and their teachers. We tried to explain to them these two circles concerning the misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, and what it means for them based on the intention. And of course we covered several topics, as you can see, from fake and junk science to clickbait, hashtags, and political micro-targeting. The three basic elements of our discussion and the core behind these discussions was about the questions that they have to ask every time they assess something that is given to them. And again, we followed this three-element approach from the Council of Europe report about the agent, who, what is the motivation to fabricate a message, if it's fabricated, who is the intended audience, is it automated, is there an intent to harm, is there an intent to mislead, and there are of course more to discuss, more questions to add here, but these were the main questions we asked of them. Then the message, what is the format, the content, the target, and the interpreter, how is the message interpreted, how it is reproduced, how it is distributed, if it is reproduced, and what is the reaction? Is it negative, is it positive, is it becoming viral? So for doing this discussion a little bit more interesting for the kids and the teachers, and a little more easy to understand, we gave them different samples of articles, news articles, and we tried to analyze with them the characteristics of each different sort of information. They were responding actually quite nicely. And to be honest, and here we can see some examples from junk science, viral hoaxes, misleading titles, and I added something which actually was not included in our curriculum back then, but it's about the fake kitchen hacks, because one student actually brought this about an impact and a good result. So we tried to see if, after all of these discussions, they were able now to distinguish between real and fake. So we gave them, that's just one example, we gave them more of a profile, an influencer profile, who is Lil Michaela. I'm sure all of you know her since you are in the field, so for you it will not be easy to guess if it's real or fake. But the discussions that this sparked were very interesting, because there were people who were very much into yes, saying that of course how can she be fake if she has almost 2 million followers, and on the other hand there were people very much into no, saying that of course she isn't fake, just take a look at the comments. And there were also other people who had other concerns, like are both of them fake, or are both of them real? Is the food fake, or is it was very interesting to see what questions you can come off with. So at the end, as I said, we tried to provide some kind of tips. Many of them are based on the key suggestions, but also coming from the resources they had collected, and we had collected and gathered for them as a preparation. We came up with this real. What do you do before you use a digital service? Be real. Read, experiment, act, and look out. And also what to do before sharing. And there for the kids, the most important, and the teacher, was to consider the impact of your post. We spent a lot of time discussing the impact of posting something on the internet. Of course, we also tried to, we didn't create this, it was taken from another source, but we discussed it with the kids because we found that it was summarizing really nicely the discussion we had with them, how to spot fake news and bots. And since I started with a question, I'm also finishing my talk with a question. It was again a question we asked the children and their teachers. Who is the robot? Would you like to say if it's A or if it's B? Who would say it's A? iNews anchor published some months ago released some months ago in China. And they have many of them. If you search for it, AI news anchors in China, you will find many of them. So, conclusion. What we learned, and I put the learned into this, the we into this parenthesis because we all learned out of this process. Because that's a didactic process, so everybody learns something. We learned that their parents, the custodians, everybody who is somehow involved with children, they care about it. Of course, designing inclusive models. In particular, we found it very interesting to design these intergenerational models. Is something teachers with students, parents with students is very good to enhance the dialogue among them. And of course, we need to have clear learning goals, what we want to achieve out of the material we are designing. Trainings, we think that they should occur on a regular basis because there's so much changing in such a fast speed. It's really difficult to catch up with. Also for the teachers, who sometimes have this role of providing these trainings. There's no panacea, but there are solutions and there are ways to help. And it's something very important is to make sure that we reach out to everyone, and I think that's exactly what the project that is launched here today is going to do. So by that, I would like to conclude my talk, and I hope there's a good start for the All Digital Week and the project that's launched today. Thank you.
Thank you, Olga. Any questions for Olga? On the presentation? Gabriela?
Thank you very much. I don't know if it's wise to use that.
Yes, we have to use
A certain distance.
Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation, and very correct you were at the end that our project wants to do exactly what you said, and actually it's very similar to what you did with your project. So I was wondering, I have a couple of concrete questions about your project. So I was wondering, how long was your training? Then you said that you involved about 70 young people, and then you talked about some intergenerational approaches. So did you do also this kind of parents, young people, teachers, young people activities together, or separately? Or how did you come to the conclusion that these approaches should be further exploited?
Thank you so much for the question. We actually did this in a big group. That was because of limitations of time and budget, because there were people coming from different, the kids and their teachers, they were coming from different countries. They had only a specific amount of time, being the workshop took place in Greece. So they only had a specific amount of time, and there were a lot more activities being planned on the same topic. Our activity, I think, took around 3 hours.
3 hours for all of this?
Yes. Yes, it was very compact. We think that it's possibly better to, if that's possible, to have it in separate days, in particular, like focusing on one topic per day. But our workshop was more to set the basis for the activities to come next. So the kids need to have and the teachers, a very solid base of at least a basic understanding of what these notions mean and what they entail. That's why we had to do a lot in a short period of time. And yes, there were both kids and teachers, and for me personally, it was extremely interesting to see this interaction between them, when sometimes the children knew more than the teachers at some topics, or they were able to understand some things a little better. And on the other hand, of course, when the teachers were able to understand the deeper, like the meta discussion in a bit more comprehensible level than their students. Yes, so I think that's, if that's answering your question. Yes.
Thank you so much, Olga. It was really very interesting. Can we put, can we make the presentation available later on?
Of course.
Online?
All the material is, yes, is available for everyone who wants it. We also have shared it with the schools that participated, and yes.
Fantastic.
Everything.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
She turned it on.
You have to turn off?
No, just can you turn on the microphone?
But I'm going to use it.
Yeah, turn it on because now it's off. She turned it off. Yes.
Hello?
Wait.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is okay. Okay, thank you. We're now proceeding towards the panel, and I have the pleasure to invite 4 experts, starting by Juliane van Reppert-Bismarck, CEO and founder of Lie Detectors. Hello, welcome Juliana. Maybe a warm round of applause. In this time of no handshakes and kisses, applause is all we have. Then I have the pleasure also to call to the space Paolo Cesarini, Head of Unit Media at DG Connect. Welcome. Then we have Flavio Grazian, who is the European Democracy Coordinator at the European Citizens Action Service. And last but not least, Clara Anot, Advocacy and Fundraising Officer at EU Disinfolab. So thank you all very much for coming here, and I have a set of questions prepared, also thanks to the contribution of my staff. But I want to start with what might seem a provocation, but no, it's an honest question. Can each of you give your definition of fake news?
Start.
Yeah? Go ahead.
That's easy. We don't use that word.
Okay.
We don't use that word because it has so many definitions. It's like a piece of soap when you try and grab it. It's very difficult when children use it, and especially in the United States, as you know, it means something entirely different from what we think it means. In translation, it becomes a little easier. We find when we're working in Germany, people think of fake news as being disinformation, but often it's just a fact that you disagree with.
Yeah, that's true. Well, do you find also, and this is also for you, do you find that it's used untranslated, even in other languages, that they would keep the English denomination? Probably yes.
Yeah. Yes, I think so, and I think it's changed meaning in translation.
Yeah.
The French, they translate everything, so they translate fake news with fausse nouvelle. But indeed, I think we should, we have been moving away from that concept of fake news. We have been embracing as a working hypothesis, I would say, the concept of disinformation. I think we should further think about what is the phenomenon that we want to capture. The more I talk around with experts and people, the more it seems that the emphasis on the conducts, on the behavior, should take the prevalence over the analysis of the content itself. This is not to say that facts are not important. I think we need to get the facts straight. I think especially in these critical circumstances where the number of, the coronavirus is teaching a lot of things in this period. So to have the right figures, the right statistics, the right remedies, what to do and what not to do, where to go, which telephone numbers needs to be called in case of emergency, all these are facts. And I think we need to maintain the focus on the importance of verifiable facts. At the same time, what is of concern is the amplifications, the techniques, the manipulations that they use in order to get visibility online. That is what should
plays a role in terms of like how much has been used and since when has been used. Let's say that probably since 2015, 2016, and this changed quite our life, I would say. But yeah, definitely we should get over it and go beyond the word itself.
Clara, you want to add?
I think there's not much to add. I totally subscribe to what Julian, Paolo, and Flavio just said. In our own work, approaching the issue, but this could also be reviewed at some point, so it's changing very fast.
So now again a question for all of you. How does each of your organization fight disinformation through media literacy? We're just these are just the servers, the starters. Sorry.
Is this the bit where I get to speak for 10 minutes? Excellent.
Let's say seven.
Seven?
Yes.
Brilliant. Even better. Much better.
You want to?
Shall I?
You have a presentation?
Yeah, I have
okay.
but don't worry, it's not very long.
Okay.
But I can sit down as well. I mean, I don't know what's better. Can you all see me? It's kind of long room, isn't it? Okay, fine, good. So, so first of all, I'm so pleased that this event is happening today, despite coronavirus, because I think 2 years ago, and I think Paula will remember, bringing up media literacy in the context of fake news, as everybody called it back then, was actually quite weird. Like, what are they talking about? They're talking about yoga when we have to go to war. You know, it really was, right? It was all about fact-checking, it was all about the algorithms, it was, I mean, and of course these things haven't gone away, but the fact that people realise that media literacy is an absolutely intrinsic element of the fight against disinformation is a huge step forward already, I would say. And, you know, we call it pre-bunking versus debunking. Gabriella was asking me to, what did you say? I should prepare something on our approach and how we empower and what our ingredients of success are. So I just thought I'd quickly go through. And so our approach is really pre-bunking versus debunking, right? You can't, you know, the idea being that nobody likes to be proved wrong, right? So if somebody has a wrong opinion or wrong fact or something, to kind of like pull that out takes an awfully lot of work. But nobody really wants to be taken for a ride either. And that, to tap into that and make that interesting, we can actually stop you, you know, we can actually help you not get taken for a ride. That's the kind of approach that we use. And it can be fun, and it doesn't always have to be about refugees and religious tolerance. It can also be about coronavirus, you know, or things that are relevant to you. That's the approach we take. How do we empower the kids? I don't know, who in this room knows what lie detectors is? Can you just put up your hand so I know? Just a few, okay, a few. Oh, can you, okay, is that better? Okay, good. So I'll tell you very quickly. We're a Brussels-based non-profit. We work in 3 countries, Germany, Austria, and Belgium, with more countries in our view. We have a European, basically, our remit is to work across Europe, and what we do is we select and we train journalists to go into classrooms and deliver impulse sessions to kids aged 10 and 11 and 14 and 15. And I can, if anybody wants to know why those age groups, I can talk about that. I won't talk about it right now. But the point is, we talk to them about 2 things. First of all, we're talking about disinformation. What is it? Why is it there? Why should we care? And what can we do about it? And secondly, how does journalism work? And what we're really trying to do, and the reason why we're working with journalists and not just with any old coach who could do this brilliantly, is because we really want to also work at humanizing journalism and really make the kids and the teachers realize that there is a difference between purposeful disinformation that is put out there to manipulate and distort and confuse, and on the other hand, journalism, which, as we know, for all the reasons that we all know about, you know, journalism is, the journalistic business model is in real trouble, thanks in part to the platforms as well. That journalism can't always deliver the full truth, but that there is a difference between partial journalism or rushed journalism, or journalism delivered to a deadline in a very short amount of space or with a catchy headline, and fake news. Anyway, so how do we empower them? We actually asked the kids a lot of questions when the journalists go into the classroom, and we now work with 200 journalists. When the journalists go into classrooms, they ask an awful lot of questions. Where are you? Where do you get your information from? These days we're asking, where are you informing yourself about coronavirus? And I can assure you they're not reading newspaper that's been shared 4 million times or either viewed or shared 4 million times. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact, I know there's a distinction, but I can't tell you. And all of this is obviously causing huge anxiety among the children. We also, we ask them, what concerns you? Know, what kind of disinformation is it that you care about? And often it's not political change, but you know, it's like weird little things that kind of worm their way into your head that aren't necessarily about left-wing or right-wing politics or anything that you can really sort in any particular way. We also work a lot at making it relevant to them. We don't necessarily, as I said, we don't come with big political themes, because we try to work in any classroom, and we often go in Germany when we're on the border with Poland, you know, and the far northeast. we have to be careful. If we want to engage all of the kids, we can't be coming with assumptions of liberal politics. We really cannot, and we'll alienate them. So we come with very simple subjects, very, very simple. Sometimes they're jokes, sometimes it's satire. But you can actually talk about quite deep and important issues with each of the examples that we use. And we want to take away their fear, because what we found is you can only be afraid for so long. Am I running out of time? I think I'm running out of time, aren't I? You can only be afraid for so long. So, we've noticed something that we call fake fatigue, which is when people put their hands in their laps and say, it's all fake anyway, I don't believe anything, I'll just believe what my friends believe, and that obviously is a recipe for disaster. So we work a lot at giving them tools. We work a lot at giving them very simple tools, check beyond the headline. It's what the OECD calls multi-source literacy, click further. Carry on clicking further. And we try to empower the teachers as well by going into small classrooms, never into a big hall, thank God, because those are being banned right now. But by going into small classrooms with no more than as many as are sitting in this room right now, we really get the teacher to realize and hear from the from their own pupils what moves them, what worries them, what confuses them, and also to be able to imagine in their own heads, how does this fit into my maths classroom or into my literature classroom or whatever. This is really important to us. Our ingredients for success, hang on, does this make it move?
I think it's the keyboard. It's sort of the keyboard.
Does that one make it?
The keyboard.
Do I just, this one here?
Should be an arrow, yes.
Hey. Oh yeah, so this is the point that I wanted to ask, like, we ask questions, right? And we work with 200 journalists, and journalists are brilliant at asking questions, so the success is inbuilt into our model. And we work a lot with feedback forms, and and the reason why that matters is that we ask questions and therefore we can adapt very quickly. Where are they? 2 years ago they were on Snapchat, and that was really new and made us feel very modern and with it. Today they're on, I don't know, who in this room is on TikTok regularly? Yeah,
but we're old.
And it's like, yeah, and who in this room is on Twitch? Yeah, and who in this room gets their news from a gaming platform called Fortnite? No, you see? And so we're trying to measure all this stuff and we're doing that completely wrong. Not completely wrong, but we really have to bear this in mind. So we're able to actually, we're able to adapt to that because we're asking them questions, and we're actually then also able to inform policymakers, because in the end what we're trying to do is we're trying to work ourselves out of a job. Our ultimate aim is to be able to close shop and all go on holiday. And in order to be able to do that, we really have to make sure that people understand that there is a problem and how they can address it. And here's another quick slides. One of the things that we found is, first of all, this digital chasm that I just showed you a little bit. Secondly, we really have to debunk this idea that it's only poor kids in Molenbeek who fall for fake news. It's not. It's to do with homogeneity versus heterogeneity. More or less, right? Okay, that doesn't cut across everywhere, but still. Teachers say to us, like a vast majority of teachers say to us, yes, we know this is important, but less than 40% have ever raised it with their children. Why? Because they just don't know how. They don't know the words. They don't know how to do this. Not all of them, right? Obviously, I've got 7 minutes and I've gone over time, so I'm speaking in generalizations, but teachers are still used largely to transmitting knowledge from top to bottom. And what the OECD's PISA director has found brilliantly was actually, and he's defined it fantastically, and if we can help him actually instill this in the schools, is that learning today is not about this vertical transmission of facts and knowledge. It is, in fact, learning is about triangulating, that is, getting knowledge from 3 different places at least, assessing the information, and building knowledge from there. And that's really what journalists do. So we are a stopgap. And we want to help the teachers. We now have just had our 5 next year's approved, which is brilliant, and we're going to be working in much more depth with the teachers whose classroom doors we've opened, which is very hard to do. But once you've opened it, my God, are they engaged and interested, just like Olga was saying. Once you have their interest, you've really got it. we're building trust, and I've talked about the playful approach, by which I mean 2 minutes.
How long is it?
2 minutes.
Okay.
It's kind of, it's a Christmas video. We also have to keeping them engaged. We work a lot at keeping them kind of like happy and engaged, and letting them understand that what they're doing is incredibly valuable. Because very often teachers are very overlooked and are just told what to do. How do I make it? Yeah, let's see. Just to give you like a proper representation of what we're doing. These are the journalists. We're working on a CRM program right now. These are all classroom visits. I'm sorry, I don't think you can read that in the back.
Thank you. Thank you.
Happy Christmas, everyone.
Thank you. Paolo, do you have a presentation?
No,
Okay.
I will speak as it comes. I think Julian has made a perfect case for the importance of media literacy and very eloquently explain what are the challenges and rewards, because you're doing a passionate work. I don't think it's very much necessary with this audience to explain the rationale for media literacy. I want to recall that strengthening societal resilience is one of the pillars of the action plan that the Commission adopted the last December, 2018 actually, against disinformation. And under the chapter Societal Resilience, of course, the biggest attention is attracted by media literacy. Now, it is passionate work. It is also travelled with challenges, I'd say. The question is that the approaches need to evolve as the target groups are different, and the harms that can be created through the development of digital media evolves as well. Now, what I mean is that take an example. I would like to refer to a study that the Oxford Institute has just published 1 month ago. The Reuters Institute for Internet just published the study on the UK general elections of December. They looked at the time spent by people on consuming news. And in particular, they looked at the consumption of the news consumption online, because of course that it is the main medium where both young people and adults get their news. So the news diet was made during December in the UK, mainly by direct access to mainstream media websites. That accounted for around 75% of the time spent online by both young and adults, by the voters. The other 25% was represented by access through social media. It doesn't mean that you do not, let's be clear, this data distinguish between direct access and indirect access to news outlets in a manner that it does not fully reflect the fact that very often users find out about mainstream media news through the social networks. So that has to be said. So, but the point here that I want to make is that the trend towards the acquisition of information, of news, through authoritative outlets does not seem to be the problem. The problem is another one. The problem is that if you look at the time spent per week by the average voter in UK during the electoral campaign, you get a quite astonishing result. You know how much time? 16 minutes. 16 minutes per week. And there are how many sources and how many sources that have been consulted on average? 22. Means that the time spent on each article by each user on average, it is less than 1 minute. The time to read the title and then the first paragraph. That is something that should concern all of us. When you talk about critical thinking and critical interactions with digital media, you have to think about the effects that digital media are provoking on each of us in terms of attention span, memory, and speed of consumption. This to say that the challenges ahead for media literacy practitioners are quite high. We need to address the question of intelligibility of the digital space. We have to understand how the information is actually acquired and consumed beyond the traditional boundaries which divide the news outlets from other sources of information. Here we have a soup of sources that cannot be distinguished according to the traditional parameters. And we need to create an environment where everybody, adults and young people, are able to understand the reliability of the sources that are accessing. And we need to have a critical interaction with the sources depending on the type of sources that we are talking about. So that is one consideration that shows how important it is to pursue the efforts around media literacy, to complement them also with efforts to boost civic engagement and civic literacy as well across people, and participation. Your question is what your organization does to support media literacy. First of all, we support this video project. Yeah. That's a concrete example. Yeah. And jokes apart, I think we are now planning for a considerable strengthening of our support actions, and that will be kind of designed in the upcoming digital education action plan that will be released during this year. I think there will be three main, or perhaps four main lines of action. One, it is the development and the fuller exploitation of the potential that has been created through the experience of the safer internet for kids to a program that could become a safer internet for youth more generally. And I think that the focus should be on a bit on the civic part, to make a younger population the risk of manipulation of personal data, so the GDPR, essentially, the rights created there, and also the right to be protected against a number of online harms. The action that will be taken, of course, will be the action that will be directed primarily to the, as I said, young population, so kids, but also teachers, also educational institutions, and so on. They will be using the traditional systems like training, events, or more digital-based tools like the platforms, right? That can gather more people around one project. The second line of action will be certainly the strengthening of the framework around media literacy. Already the adoption of the Audiovisual Media Service Directive created the basis for a more rigorous framework for this type of initiatives. First of all, the member states are now obliged to take concrete actions and to report to the Commission about what they are doing. We intend to continue the experience around the Media Literacy Week, to scale it up, to make it an instrument of cooperation between the Commission, or the European institutions rather, and member states. This year, unfortunately, the situation is such that it is very much at risk. The media literacy, which is planned for the end of March, is very much at risk, but the risk of postponement, But that was planned in cooperation with the Croatian presidency, just to show how important it is to create these links between a European level that coordinates and a national level that actually implements and invents and make things happen. There are, in addition to that, of course, within the media literacy and the relationship with the media literacy, the obligations for member states, there are also an issue that remains to be pursued further, which is the integration and educational curricula of media literacy as such. If you, in the same context, in the context of the ADMSD, there is also a role for platforms to play. Platforms need to provide tools that enhance and not depress critical thinking by the users. That links up with the Code of Practice Against Disinformation, where the discussion about how to make algorithms working in a more transparent way and in a manner that expose the users to different sources and invite, in the facts, in the practice, the users to think critically, but by the mere fact of being exposed to a variety of dissonant sources of information and not locked up in their own filter bubbles or answering the confirmation bias that otherwise would really depress. There are critical thinking capabilities, the users' critical thinking capabilities. That's a concrete example of it. Third, in this logic of strengthening the framework for media literacy, we will continue to invest in projects. We have done it so far with resources coming from the European Parliament. We have been asking for resources to be attributed directly to the Commission within the Creative Europe program. We hope to receive confirmation that the Council and Parliament agrees with the requested amounts, with the requested budget, and the idea that it is to have at least 10 new projects per year supported directly from Brussels as a way to highlight best practices, to create lighthouse effects that could inspire further action to be taken at member state level. Third point, that is pretty new. We are building a European Digital Media Observatory. We are selecting right now, these days, the consortium that will run this project under the Connecting Europe facility. It's an ambitious project. It aims at creating links between fact-checkers, journalists, civil society, and academic researchers. The aim is, of course, to have the tools, the capacity to better understand the impact of disinformation on audiences and people. It is an occasion to see, through the appropriate access to platforms data, what is the real impact of the policies put in place by the platforms to counter disinformation. But it is also an excellent opportunity to better through the tools that I've mentioned, which enable a better understanding of the phenomenon, also to develop, to develop relevant knowledge for media literacy practitioners in order to bring their own activities and practices up to the next level. So that will be also, should be considered also as a platform for coordination and development of best practices for media literacy practitioners. And fourth, and I conclude on this fourth, which is the most, I would say, forward-looking idea that is developing now that, in these days in DigiConnect. It is in reality to wonder, to understand what is the impact in the longer term of digital media on human well-being. We have had the first symposium with the 25 scientists in Rome last October, and there are first indications that there are a number of changes that are induced by the use of, by the intensive use of digital technologies, screen exposure, intensive view of social media, kind of habit of acquiring knowledge through recommendation systems, creates changes at three different levels. The first is a neurophysiological level. There are initial evidence that, for instance, there is a lower activity in the neural circuits in the frontal lobe, which could explain, for instance, certain reluctance to act in a civilized manner and to give away the most extreme pulsions and expression of emotions when you are online, something that nobody would dare to do when it's under physical environment. There is also possibilities of observable changes in the thickness of the cortex, which should explain, for instance, lower levels of attention spans and memory, and effects on memory. Further, at the second level, we need to understand better how our cognitive processes are changing because the interactions that happens at the individual level with digital media modify profoundly the perception of the reality as we have had it so far, when the experience was simply sensorial through the five senses, and where was not determined by a number of other intermediations like screens. So effects on the cognitive processes. And the third level is the effect on the collective intelligence, which should not become collective demons, but risk to be so. The point here is if it is true that the collective intelligence is something that is bigger than the sum of the individual contributions of those that participate in an endeavor and jointly contribute to this common endeavor, it is also true that these effects, these positive effects, relies on a number of factors, such as psychological safety of the participant, accountability of the system, of the framework, and existence of mediators or mediation systems that make the role of each of the participant valid and protected in a way. That doesn't happen in online. And that could be one of the reasons that could explain why collectively we also behave differently when the interaction happens to be mediated by digital media compared to in physical environments. We need to understand all these phenomena much better than we do today. We need scientific research that indicates whether or not the problem is not only in the fact that we read less and less, 16 minutes to understand whether you have to go to A or B per week. But probably it's because also the technologies that we have been served so far push us in that direction. And whether there are better technologies or different technologies that should be developed to counter these possible long-term effects that could change radically the face of our societies. So that is the final point I wanted to make. We are going to put this long-term research in our research program under Horizon Europe, and we try to build up a multidisciplinary community of scientists that will look at the effects of digital media on human well-being at these three levels.
Thank you very much, Paolo. Clara, the same question to you, but also I'm intrigued by the name of your organization because the name seems to imply that you do the opposite of what you probably are doing. You're not creating pieces of disinformation and testing them in a lab, although that might be an interesting approach. Voilà. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. Actually, we're gaining more and more knowledge on how disinformation works, so I think that actually we should now be able to create our own disinformation. Maybe we should try to pivot our organization. So yeah, I'll try to be quick. So a short presentation of the organization, so its member states, values, and institutions. Maybe many people actually confuse us with EU versus Disinfo, which is part of the EEAS action service from the Commission. So please don't. So one of my colleagues did this very funny meme, and actually I find it very relevant from our day-to-day work. So what our family think we do, what our friends think we do, what trolls think we do, what funders think we do, what we feel we do, like a little bit of everything, and what we actually do, which is hard work. So yeah, what do we actually do, like seriously? So we conduct research on disinformation campaigns. We do not fact check the content ourselves. For that we base our research on the work of journalists who verify the content. But actually we try to focus more on what Paulos referred to as the behavior and how disinformation campaigns are actually built and conducted and by whom, when we are able to identify the people behind. So based on our research, we try to provide decision makers with recommendations when we can. And also we have outreach activities. We organize an annual conference that we unfortunately had to postpone due to the coronavirus, but which should take place in September 28th and 29th of September. So please subscribe to our newsletter or mailing list to get the information. Yeah, so actually we do our work because we feel that in the field of disinformation, the area of interest of disinformation, actually you have many different actors working on this specific issue, but with their own perspective. So you have researchers from the academia, fact checkers, of course, journalists, media literacy experts, people working on algorithms, artificial intelligence, small NGOs, and we would like to, what we aim for is to actually create bridges between the different actors to create projects together and develop a better understanding of the issue. In terms of media literacy, we are also part of an Erasmus Plus project called Open Your Eyes, which is, the target group of this project are the adult learners. So we discussed a lot about curriculums for children and young people, but we feel that adults and also elderly, who are now online, should also have media literacy curriculums. So we work on building a database of media literacy initiatives in Europe. And from this database, we are now creating a curriculum to deliver what we call Check It Out labs for trainings for adult learners. So this is the database. You can have a look at the website of the project. It's called openyoureyes.info. And if you yourself are part of different media literacy initiatives or know about interesting media literacy initiatives in your country, please fill in the form and describe the project, and we would like to have a database as comprehensive as possible on the European projects for media literacy. So now I will do a short presentation on how disinformation networks work with a concrete case study of a research that we published together with the newspaper Le Monde in France about a disinformation campaign and how it was done. So this case is called Suavelos. Suavelos is actually the name of a disinformation website. And so how we started the research is actually we came across this piece of news that has been fact-checked by AFP, so a French fact-checking organization, about a policeman that would have been molested by two migrants in Italy. And actually, the truth was that he had been molested by 2 American tourists. First thing. And what was interesting is that this information actually came from this suavelos.eu website and had been shared on this Facebook page, Je soutiens la police, which is I support the police. And we were like, okay, interesting, let's have a look at that. So we went on this Facebook page, I support the police, had a look at the information, the transparency of the page. So this page was created in 2017. I mean, quite a large fan base, more than 172,000 fans on Facebook. I support the police. I mean, it's a name which is quite attractive. Many people support the police. I mean, in France, the situation changed a little bit after the Gilets jaunes, but I mean, everyone could support police. And they mostly shared content from 2 different websites, one called suavelos.eu and the other one called bellica.fr. And what we did was actually following Facebook algorithms. So if you look on the right, the recommended Facebook pages. So we have Petition Action, Suavelos News, I Support the Militians, Vive la France, and so on and so forth. And so we were recommended so many different Facebook pages, and we just had a look at that. And we were able to identify a pattern on all those I support pages. So you see it's always the same type of posting content, always the French flag, and always content from suavelos.eu. And so the type of content is mostly against the migrants, white supremacist content actually. It was really weird. And what they did is actually cross-posting on those different pages. So you always had the same type of content shared on the different pages from one another, always from suavelos.eu. So you can see all the different types of posts and content. So what is actually Suavelos? So we went on this website, and it's actually a white supremacist network. It's really written like black on white on the description of the page. It's a white supremacist network run by those 2 people there. I mean, their picture on the website. And so yeah, they claim to be white supremacist, and they claim the superiority of the white race, and they denounce the loss of our identity and ideology and so on. And so what we were able to identify here is kind of a pattern. And I mean, this is something that we found in many other Facebook pages, playing a lot on emotions for the people. Then, I mean, Facebook algorithm is attracting recommendation, engagement, recommending those pages on different other page. And then it's always the same type of content from what we call a content repository, so basically a website, which is suavelos.eu in this case. And they make money out of that, out of the ads on the website, of the traffic they generate with Facebook. And in this case, what was even more funny is that they sold goodies. So they sold books, T-shirts, and they made money out of this support pages. They even had a crowdfunding platform, so you could give them money to support the movement. And so this is how they create kind of a network of accounts on social media. So here I described what's going on Facebook, but you also had content on YouTube, accounts on Twitter, always redirecting to this website. And this is really a pattern that we see in many case studies that we do. This is another one, l'infonational.net. So again, a website fact-checked several times by fact-checkers. But it was mostly politically polarizing content, far left and far right. And actually, we had a look through a specific tool called CrowdTangle, how this how this content was shared on the internet. And we found that it was actually shared on this Facebook page called Marine Le Pen 2020. Interesting. So we had a look at this Facebook page. And just at looking on the transparency features of this page, we found that it was managed from Ukraine. Anyone could find that. I mean, it's in the transparency features of the page. And looking at this page, we found that this guy was actually posting a lot of content on these groups, and we found that there were other related groups, mostly Gilets jaunes and very nationalist pages. Always the same guy. So we had to look at his profile picture, look a little bit too perfect, I mean, look familiar. And by Google reverse search, we were able to find that this guy was actually the one on the right. And so, I mean, it's just a picture taken from Google, basically. It's not a real person. Yeah, and again, you have this cross-posting, different type of pages, always a pattern in the way they post the content. If you look at the timestamp, we don't see them here, but the content was always posted exactly at the right time, like 1 minute of difference for one page and another. So, which means that it's kind of coordinated, automated, and it's always very political pages. And then we went even further, looking at the IP address of this website, Info National, and we found that with the same ID you had different pages, which means there was a network of pages, and this is how we found that you had different websites, one sharing more far-right content, the other one more far-left content, the other one more Gilets jaunes, always trying to attract traffic by posting on Facebook with a fake profile. So as you see, a similar situation as the disinformation cycle that I showed previously. Yeah, so just to explain a bit what we do and also what we mean when we talk about behavior in terms of disinformation and coordinated action. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Flavio, do you also have a...
No.
Okay. Okay, there you go.
So thank you very much for being here. It's very much a pleasure to speak with you, and I found super interesting that you started like the Sorelos case with this news about this Italian carabinieri that was actually eventually killed, because I remember the news very well in social media, and obviously I saw it in an Italian perspective, and I've never seen something like that. I mean, there was no disinformation about it, but in France apparently that was different, which makes us really reflect upon how this is a very much complicated issue. And you have been like very much, all the panelists before, like quoted and stated some elements that here are extremely important, such as, for example, the speed in the access of information by people themselves. But yeah, to give you a bit more an idea of what we do, like I work for the European Citizen Action Service, which is an NGO based in Brussels, and it is a European association, so we have members all around Europe. So when we talk about this topic, we very much try to use a European approach. Our mission is to empower citizens to exercise their rights, and therefore, of course, the access to information is pivotal when we talk about this topic here. My background personally, like when I started working, I was very much interested in the use of e-participation tools and technology to foster citizen participation in politics, which is very much a problem here. And starting from there, of course, I got interested in technology and how technology works, and then you see the other part of the spectrum. So I came from like a positive approach, saying, oh wow, technology can be extremely cool, and it can really be used to do a lot of nice things, such as like involve young people, for example, more like in this, and then of course you see there that it's way more complicated, and it's extremely complicated. We do on this topic 3 kinds of activities, which is research, European projects, and also like service contracts for the European Commission. So definitely all the efforts that the EU does in this are very much welcome. We try, as I said, to connect the dots around with our members. And what we started to do when all these things started was really like to sit down with a few members that we have in different European countries such as Estonia or Latvia and Greece, which have very much different approaches in technology. And we started like thinking about how can we handle this, what shall we do, how can we use actually digital tools to address the issue. And what we found is that we need more information, we need more study, we need really to understand things better. So your slide is very much something that I understand. And obviously, like, we started to say, well, let's try to like do some project about it, and we had in the past 2 years 2 kind of different projects, because we really wanted to use like the approach that we've been using before. So therefore, like, to involve citizens in actively take part of like this issue, to listen to them as well, and to inform them eventually, of course, on what it is about. So we continue our like program regarding like fostering citizen participation. So we launched a digital platform up to the European elections. In this digital platform, people could like kind of play a game to see where the stances were in terms of like their candidates. While they were seeing their stances of their candidates, they could also get more information about their real stances. So the pro and cons of such key topics that were running out of the European elections. Because we really thought that people, as Paolo was explaining before, like, and the Reuters Institute is, I mean, a great source of information if you want to get a study out of this topic. They have a very kind of like dynamic and quick approach. They see something online and they say, okay, perhaps I can get to know already the topic. While of course it's way more complicated than this. And then we run another project which was way more on collecting data around EU, again, because what we think is on a European level, how technology use it is incredibly different. So there are countries where, of course, have more kind of like external problem when we talk about disinformation, such as, I don't know, Latvia, that is very much oriented on trying to focus on the external part, like with Russian influence, or like Greece or Czech Republic, where they have way more internal problem on how their parties actually like put information online and how they exploit them for political purposes. And we launched a survey on 5 different universities in 5 different countries, and then we tried to use the results of this survey to run local workshops that were intended to 2 different target groups. The first one was young activists, and it was very much interesting how young people, I mean, older than what young target groups deals with, but it's very much interesting how young people understand this topic or do not understand this topic, what their expectations are, and on NGOs on a local level. Because I really think that, like, when we try to go ahead and look for the way forward, it is very important to empower the NGOs there that can understand what is the situation of their country, and they can also like act upon the local reality. And of course, like I mean, association like detectors, I mean, they're doing an amazing job in like going around, and the 3 different countries is already a massive effort, and particularly if you do it in schools, it's incredible. But it is really important to go forward in this thing. Sometimes, like, we really think that all these like information, all these sources of information that we have here, it's something that it is for us, but it's also something against us. So it's obviously important to give to citizens the instrument to understand what they're doing. I still believe that technology has also a very positive aspect. So in this, for example, we're trying to build kind of a repository of like digital tools that can be used also to unmask this information. I mean, and do, for example, what this InfoLab does brilliantly, like tracking these algorithms. They're like tools that can be used to detect bots, for example, spreading information online, and many other things. But yes, I mean, it is really complicated sometimes. Regarding a bit more like what are the necessary ingredients of educational programs on media literacy, I still believe that this has to be calibrated, of course, to the local level. We have seen from our experience that non-formal education can also play a very good role. So people are here, so we have a bit more time for the Q&A and for the next questions.
Thank you so much, indeed. I do have questions, but I would also like to, we've been now for an hour with the panel, so I'm happy to open for some questions from the audience, if there's any. Not yet? No one wants to break the ice, or Gabriela does?
Thank you very much to all the panelists. That was, all the presentations were very informative and inspiring also for our project. From what Flavio said at the end about the role of non-formal education, and that sometimes it's more successful, or at least it's complementary to formal education. Because you mentioned that with the new Digital Education Action Plan, you will look at how media literacy could be included in the formal curriculum. I would recommend, and I would ask you if you are thinking about also expanding or enlarging this action also to non-formal education, because so far the Digital Education Action Plan has been very much focused on formal education and on schools, but there's a lot of very impactful activities happening also outside of the classroom or in the classroom, but as extracurricular activities, and there is a lot of collaboration between teachers and actors outside the school, so this plan should take this into account somehow in order to get the big picture. So are you thinking this way?
I would like to.
Yeah, sure. In for instance, in the SECA Internet for Youth, well, the actions that are designed to be taken there are both for the formal and the informal sector. The other thing is about how to reach the adults and how to design specific projects for adults. The most vulnerable segment of the population, indeed, are the young. Let's say from 13 to, I think, Juliana must have this data much better, more accurate than mine. I think it's between 13 and 17, something like that. And then they're above 55. Above 55. Those are the two most vulnerable segments of the population. For that, I think the combination of the 3/4 actions that have been mentioned before entails a different diversifications across the different type of targets. Yes.
I had also a question. You all mentioned the issue of disinformation, and particularly Clara made also some very good example. This obviously would not be possible if it weren't for a fundamental human flaw of each of us, which is called confirmation bias. The tendency to seek out information which is already confirming what we know and what we believe to be true. And this was also very well illustrated by the American psychologist Jonathan Haidt in his book, The Righteous Mind. So considering this problem, and because you, for instance, Clara, you mentioned there's exactly identical content. So how can we, or what is your experience, if any, particularly in a training context or so, how can we fight this, not fight, but become aware of this flaw that we have and work on it? I see Juliana.
Yeah, I have two answers to that. So first of all, there's an amazing researcher called Stephen Lewandowski, who's based at Bristol University, I think Bristol or Bath, and he has done some really interesting scientific experiments on it is this pre-bunking, it is this sort of inoculation when somebody knows that they are susceptible to confirmation bias. when they know that they are being targeted because of their bias, they are more resilient to it. So it is self-knowledge. And one of the things we really must do, and one of the things we do in the classroom, is really make the children aware that it is their demand for the disinformation, and they're clicking on the things that please them, that also perpetuates this. The other side, I would say, is the supply side, because yes, there's always been propaganda. People have always believed what they wanted to believe. It is biologically built into us. But we currently have very unregulated superhighways for this disinformation to be zooming around the planet, in a nanosecond, and those are the platforms. Now, one of the reasons why we take no money from the platform is because we are extremely concerned about the influence buying that is happening right now in this city, in other capital cities. It is no surprise that Media Literacy Week, that was just been cancelled in Zagreb, had an industry-led panel, and that was by invitation of the presidency. And we understand that there is a great need for money, and I'm so pleased to have you say resources. We've had long conversations about this. There was something called a high-level expert group on disinformation, where something was said, which was, we've got to make a safe vessel for funding. It is undisputed that the platforms have got enormous amounts of money, but by letting their marketing arm and their lobbying arm give funds directly to initiatives such as ours, which they do very generously, we are also playing a part in their ever greater security from the sort of regulation that could actually interrupt what is happening. And so this is, I think, one of the most important things, and one of the things that we say to the platforms again and again is, if you're going to fund something like this and retain your credibility, create it within a space of a foundation like other people do. That's a roundabout way. I mean, it's a long way of answering this question, but I think it's really important to address it both from the human, yes, we are human beings and we're susceptible to believing what we want to believe, but also we're currently those emotions are being triggered, sustained, and monetized at our expense at the moment without very little stopping them. And those things are called mainly YouTube and YouTube and Facebook. Yeah.
No.
You want to say anything?
No.
Give more money. Give more money.
No. Give more money to whom? We need to find a clean house, for sure. I wonder whether the European Digital Media Observatory could become a clearing house, for instance. But there is a thought that comes like that. And the other thing is that they also should think about designing their services in a way that are safe by design. So I think after the privacy by design, we should start to think about safety by design. This has to bear in mind what is our own human well-being, actually. I'm afraid I have to go because this meeting is starting in 5 minutes.
Anyone else would like to add? Okay, very good. Any questions from the audience? Then I would say thank you very much, and we will proceed now with the next step of our program. Thank you very much. First, and then by my, who is the program officer and project coordinator of Get Your Facts Straight, and Gabriela in turn will be followed by our communications manager, my colleague Yekaterina Clifford, who will talk more extensively about the All Digital Week. Yeah, it's the following slide.
Thank you very much, Renato, and thank you for the contribution of all the panelists. Already there's been quite a few get your feedback as well about what you think. So we were prompted by this reality that we have discussed so far. There are different topics which provoke or generate a lot of fake news, a lot of disinformation, if we have to use the better term. And it's difficult to know what to believe and what is false, especially certain users of online information. But
generally everyone. We believe that everyone should be equipped with the skills in order to be able to distinguish and not to get lost in this ocean of not correct or true information. There are lots of different examples which have been shared so far. This is one of those which kind of stuck in my mind, and I always recall this photo which caused very passionate discussion in one Facebook group, again a nationalist Facebook group. Basically, one of the members of the group posted this photo of the empty bus seats as a joke, and then this entailed a very heated debate by the members about women in burqa. So yeah, as I said, why this project? Because we've been talking for quite some time that media literacy is a key skill. It's part of digital literacy for us, although we can argue which is part of what. But in any case, we believe that since media is being increasingly digitalized, and since citizens, people increasingly use online media, we also have the responsibility as Digital Skills Network and Digital Inclusion Network to provide our end users with those skills. Yeah, there are some statistics at the European level that many, well, almost everyone has been exposed to disinformation and fake news, and that I think we all agree that this is a very important phenomenon nowadays. So about our project, about what's unique. We adopted this approach of the intergenerational learning, but including this family perspective, because we were mapping different projects when we were developing our proposal, and we saw that there are a lot of projects bringing young people and adults together, but there are not many initiatives which build this family dynamics and which encourage parents and their kids to talk among each other about these topics. So the training is not a short one, not a long one. It's 15 hours in total of content, which we divided into 5 hours for the young people, 5 hours for the parents, grandparents, because we also want to be open and involve grandparents when parents are not available, and 5 hours together. And what we teach, we selected, or we came up with these 3 modules, and I'm quite happy that we are going in the right direction, because these overall topics have been mentioned already by the panelists, by Juliane, but also by Olga, that we should focus on the what, why, and how, and this is the basic. This is what everybody needs to understand in order to be able to find their way into this online media changing online media landscape. And we are going to do this in 7 countries. We have defined our common learning outcomes, and we want to test this program in different contexts. So we will also contextualize it. Our partners at the national level are adding examples which are relevant for their country, because sometimes one example from Germany is not relevant at all to the learners in Croatia or in Romania. So we want to make the contents as relevant as possible to the people, to the participants. And in addition to the training, what we are starting today and what we would like to involve you all in
is an awareness raising campaign, and we want to spread these messages, because our training is just a drop in the ocean, but we all agree that these drops are necessary because, as Juliane said, now there is finally and luckily a common agreement that media literacy should be part of the solution, and we should not be talking only about fact-checking, about regulations, but we should be talking more and more about empowering citizens. And the message that we want to really everybody agrees, policymakers, but also other stakeholders, up to the point where we say, okay, yes, of course, media literacy is important. But, and there is the big but there, that this is a long-term solution requiring a lot of effort, and that it's so hard to educate everyone that we don't know if we will ever get there. But we say that, okay, that's true, but still, even small things, even short trainings, even just laying the basis, just planting the seed, is still better than not going into the media literacy, and it's still better than leaving people without any support in order to acquire these skills. And of course, training programs, they can be short, they can be very interactive, they can be fun. So there are different ways to teach those skills to the different target groups, and we shouldn't stop there saying that, no, that's just too much and too hard to do and to achieve. Every effort in the right direction is important, and that's the message that we want to spread with this campaign. These are the partners with whom we are doing the project in the 7 countries, as I mentioned. But of course, our results and materials will be available for everyone who wants to implement the training. And actually, this campaign is part of a bigger thing, of our annual awareness raising campaign, which we are doing since more than 10 years. About digital literacy. So I would like to invite my colleague to speak about the bigger framework. But media literacy has come out as one of the main topics of this campaign in the last years from the bottom up. So the demand for this topic came out from the organizations and from the end users. And we would like to expand it even further in the next years.
Thank you very much. Hello everybody, and hello to the audience and to our online audience that we have. And I hope we'll be able to see the slide. Sorry about that. Can we do the big screen? No, probably not. So let's try that. So All Digital Week campaign that Gabriel already mentioned started in 2010 on the initiative of All Digital members. We wanted to create something that unites all of us, that is not governed by just one particular topic, but it's very inclusive and where everybody can participate. And we are continuing this campaign since then. And the main thing about this campaign is that indeed it is for everybody. The campaign was inspired originally by one of our members. It is a UK organisation called Good Things Foundation, and they had this campaign. It started even earlier, and then we took it into European level and tried to expand it and increase the participation from all over Europe. So far we have more than 1 million people that have been trained. Of course you can say that, okay, it's been 10 years and it's not really that much, but we need to take into account that the first target group are the people who have never been online before. So it's very individual approach. So all our trainers have to really work hard to bring people online, help them to try their first click during this campaign, and then help them continue their digital journeys. So we are very proud and we are very thankful to all our partners who have been doing this work all these years in their grassroots organizations, in the small villages and small libraries, in schools, in universities and community learning centers. And some of our partners are here today, and we are very thankful for them, for their work. And please send your best wishes and all good luck with the campaign this year, and very many thanks from all of us for the work that you are doing. So, why do we need it? I don't think people in this audience need to be reminded, because as we always say, 43% of Europeans still don't have basic digital skills. And of course, when we talk about media literacy, digital skills is an important part of it. And when we talk about digital skills, there are a lot of topics that are intertwined and interconnected. So it's about online safety, it's about skills for the current jobs affected by digital transformation, it's about cybersecurity and critical thinking. So everything is in relation to that, and that's what we are trying to do during our campaign. The most important thing, of course, is to put this topic on the European map. And we have our own map of events, and this is the map from last year, when we had organizations from 31 countries. We are talking about wider Europe, and 130,000 participants were involved in events, in training, in workshops, in conferences, and they had consultations. So this year, we know that there will be fewer because of the virus and because all of the, a lot of the events were cancelled, but we still hope that some of this will be happening, and we also trying to encourage more webinars when people can learn online. So we invite, of course, all of you to join the campaign and see what's possible to achieve, even in the current situation, but try to help as many people as possible to gain digital skills. Because as we know, it's not nowadays easy to live without having those. So we've been running as All Digital this campaign from the very beginning, and each year we have a network of partners. This year we are very thankful to Certiport. They are supporting the campaign, and Certiport is a Pearson VUE business. It's a leading provider of exam certification delivery, development, and also program services, and they are working with a network of authorized partners and testing centers across the world. So we are excited that they are part of our campaign this year, and that some of their partners will be joining the campaign, but in our other activities of training centers. So of course, our them have started from the beginning and have been doing this campaign from 2010 for 10, 11 years. Some of them just joined for the first year or second year, and now we have 20, and I know that a few more will be joining this list by the end of this month. So, as it was mentioned, this year the campaign is contributing to Get Your Facts project, we are doing it together, and also to European Media Literacy Week. So what are the main topics? I've already mentioned them. It's media literacy and critical thinking, online safety and cybersecurity, skill sets for workforces, and of course, underlining all of that, we want to ensure that people think about the lifelong learning, that you cannot just learn a digital skill and it will last till the rest of your life. They always have to be increased and advanced and upskilled. So as we say, All Digital Week is for everybody, and there are events for kindergartens, learning, for example, with robots for primary school children in Bulgaria, or the events for how to use tablets in the retirement home in Germany. There are drop-in consultations in Sweden. There are lots of robotics events in Croatia, and just a number of examples from our partners. So yeah, we have different levels of participation, but anybody can share what is going on in your organizations with the hashtag AllDigitalWeek. And tag us, All Digital EU, not to confuse with just All Digital, it's All Digital EU. And also, if you have events on media literacy, don't forget to add the hashtag Get Your Facts Straight so that we can see what is going on and also share and support you. So, as I said, anybody can join. You just need to organize an event, or if you already have an event added to the map, you can receive a certificate. And also, we have 2 competitions this year. One is all the best events will automatically enter the competition, and the 3 best events will be selected by the jury and with a draw, and they will be invited to participate in our annual All Digital Summit. This year it is in Berlin. And another event competition that we would like to announce is for best video. So now it would be nice to have a video, but we have only videos in the national languages that partners shared 2 or 3 years ago. We want something new. So if you or your partners organize some campaigns, if you organize an event, please create a video share, and then we'll see what we can do. And maybe next year it will be about the campaign from our participants, not just from us. So also, as we always say, you can share all the blogs, or your event organizers can share blogs on our community network called Unite AT. All the blog posts will be published there. And yeah, I wanted to, just run away for a second. We have some of the partners here, and can I ask a short question? It's impromptu, it was not absolutely prepared. Can I ask Ivan from Croatia? He's one of the partners. And just why do you still participate? One sentence. Why do you think it's important?
Well, it's fun to the users, it's beneficial to society, and we enjoy doing it.
Thank you so much. And I know that a lot of events are being organized in Latvia in Ventspils.
Yes.
Dacia, can you say just one word? Why do you still do it? Make sure that you spread the word about it. We'll be very thankful to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ekaterina, and thank you all for coming. And again, an invitation to join and follow us during the week from the 23rd to the 29th of March. I'm sure because of the crisis now there will be a lot of creativity. I think we can close now. There is food downstairs at the 0 level. So you go out from the left and you'll go in this direction, okay? You can follow us. We are not going to run away. And there is, should the hands be washed before or now? You have serviettes there.
And in the ground floor they said soap in the bathroom in front of them.
And downstairs there's also soap in the bathroom. That's always good to know. Hopefully they have still a few rolls of toilet paper, considering that it's going to be has sold a lot apparently in the last few days, at least in Australia. Voila, thank you very much.